Welcome to the She Slays the Day podcast with Dr. Lauryn Brunslick. Direct, soulful, comedic, advice for female chiropractors' most stagnating questions. Let's talk business, marriage and relationships, momming, and self-development. Here's your host, Dr. Lauryn Brunslick.
Hey, She Slayers. This is the She Slays the Day podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Lauryn Brunslick, and I am super glad that you're with me today because this is one of my besties that is on. I talk so much about the women in my life who have shaped my last 10, 12 years of chiropractic and chiropractic school. And when I sat down and thought about, before the podcast started, like who would I want on, I knew that Dr. Lona Cook was going to be on at some point, and I was just waiting for the right timing and all that. So I'm so excited to share this episode with you. Before we do that, though, I just need to do a little bit of like one-sided culture conversation. You know what I should do? I need to find somebody who's into like e-news and culture shit as much as I am. And we'll just do like mini Wednesday, like 10-minute, like, OMG, did you see what she wore to the Oscars? What are your thoughts? Are ostrich feathers now in? I don't know, whatever. Anyways, so is anybody else watching Americana by Taylor Swift? Or I shouldn't say watching. Have you watched Americana by Taylor Swift? I don't know. I forget when Taylor was born because that's a weird sentence. I forget when I think it's 1989 because I'm pretty sure she has an album named 1989. And so I'm 1986 is when I was born. And all my students just went, oh shit, you old. No, and so I don't know, like I liked Taylor. It might be something to the fact that she was just really young in my mind, or I don't know. But anyways, I haven't really gotten on a major T Swift train. I've never been a hater. But I watched her Netflix program because I had a couple people say like, oh my gosh, it's really, really good. And I think I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I identify more with Taylor Swift than Beyonce. Now, I want you to know how hard that was for me to say. Because I love Beyonce. Like that girl, if it was acceptable, which it's not acceptable, but let's just say that God was like, okay, you can build a throne to one person on earth. He's not going to say that. You're not allowed to. It would be Beyonce, and that doesn't change. But like T Swift, she her what is it called? Her program on Netflix, her special, just talks about a lot of her like obsession with seeking approval of others. And it's definitely been a big part of my story of like needing that approval. And it's a consistent part of my story in like making decisions based on what God is telling me and what I feel is right and what is good for my family and not the approval of others. So it's a really good documentary, and I think she just got herself a mega fan. Now, this does not mean that I am not Beyonce's still like fangirl. I just think that, are we all kind of on the scale of approval? Am I crazy? Or like other people deal with this too, right? Like that people, is this just a part of life that you start out like Taylor Swift, like caring about everybody, and then you're like, fuck it, I don't care at all. And now all of a sudden you like boss them into Beyonce and don't give an F status. I don't know. See, this is where it'd be nice if there was somebody else talking to me right now and we could, but it's just you guys. So you're just in your car going like, heck yeah, Lauryn. Or it's like, no, girl, you crazy. So listen to it as if she needed She Slays the Day to be an official sponsor or promotional piece for her Netflix special. Here I am. Okay, so let's do a listener highlight. So this one is titled Love, Love, Love with like the little megaphone thing and stuff coming out. And it's 5 stars. And it says, so happy to have stumbled across the podcast late last year. I was needing an attitude adjustment regarding starting my own practice and being so slow in comparison to the busy schedule of being an associate for the last 5 years. Dr. Lauryn keeps it so real and allows me to give myself grace. And that is from Dr. Summer, SATX. I'm assuming that's Texas. I always like going back into and being like, what do I know about this login name? They're probably from Texas. Maybe they're a Libra. But yeah, so thank you so much for that. Super appreciate it. If Dr. Summer, girl, send me if you don't have any She Slays stickers, I really appreciate you putting that on Apple Podcasts. So send me your address and I will hook you up with some stickers. I don't have your address. So it's so funny because I said I would give somebody stickers a while ago and they messaged me like, hey, you read my thing, but I never got my stickers. And I'm like, well, girl, I don't have your address. Like, I'm creepy. The internet is creepy, but I don't have that kind of information about you. All right. But anyways, if you are going to leave me an Apple Podcast review, I'm going to bend over backwards to try and get you some stickers. And if you don't got them, reach out to me, DM me, and I will send them your way. Okay. So like I said, today's guest and I go way back. When I was about, I think probably like 3 years into practice, I stagnated. Basically, I reached a really good successful level and I was having a hard time busting through. And so I reached out to one of my friends. Well, she wasn't really a friend at that point. We knew each other. She had graduated earlier. I definitely knew of her and she only lived like 45 minutes away. And so I reached out to Dr. Lona Cook and said like, will you coach me? Okay, so you know by now that I actually wish I would have gotten a coach earlier than 3 years into practice, but whatever. And I don't know if she's coaching anymore because this girl is hella busy. I think we talk on the air. I don't remember if we were recording or not, but I'm like, are you an Enneagram 3? And she's like, yes. I'm in 3. So, I mean, she is a speaker. She's creating masterminds. She's the president of the Wisconsin State Association. She's written books. So she grew up in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, and she's a graduate of University of Wisconsin-Madison. And then her and I, like I said, she graduated from Northwestern Health Sciences also for her doctorate of chiropractic. But I think she was like 3 to 6 months ahead of me. She opened her first practice in Western Wisconsin in 2010 and has since opened 3 more practices with her partners and has allowed this vision for natural healthcare and teaching families about the power of chiropractic across all of Western Wisconsin. So Dr. Cook is also, like I said, she runs the state association and speaks nationally many weekends out of the year. And she's done that for years, spreading the message of just better living through chiropractic care. She is definitely, when I think who are our spire-fitting female chiropractic philosophers that are like living amongst us right now, I think of Dr. Lona. So she lives with her husband, Kyle, and her son, Jack, on Lake Wissota, and that's in Wisconsin, for those that don't know that. She's seriously like the epitome of doing all the things. Oh, wait, hold on. I actually don't know. This is where it'd be nice if Kirby was in the room. I don't know if epitome is a good thing or a bad thing. Did I just insult her? I really don't know. Well, I meant it good. If epitome is a good thing, she is the good thing of doing all the things. Shit, sometimes I suck at life, you guys. Who allows me to have a podcast? Okay, so her and I tackle in this episode a not so upbeat conversation, and it's really on how to handle practice when your heart isn't 100% in it. Her story is just amazing. What she's transitioned through and evolved through in the last few years, and I can't wait for you to hear it. Before we start, you know what I'm going to do, though. So let's stop, connect, past us, future us, all of our consciousness. Let's just like take that breath together and pray. Dear Heavenly Father, help us to lean on you during times of doubt and trouble. Help us feel supported and not alone when life isn't going how we planned it to be. Help us not only to see the silver lining, but to truly learn how to be grateful for the downs in addition to the ups. So often we come to you and we are just like, thank you for the blessings. Thank you for the blessings. But I know there's so many lessons and growth in those downs. That is where so much of our evolution, so much of our story is. And it's where you're the closest to us and most present. You're so good. for those listening to this episode that maybe aren't like in the you are so good boat, and they're hanging their hope on this episode, getting out of their grief, like maybe this is going to be the thing to help them. I don't know why they're listening, but whatever their story is, why they're listening, let this conversation be a spark to light them in the right direction. Times seem so dark and confusing sometimes. Life is freaking hard. Give them peace in their breath. Tell them you're right there next to them, and that as they're walking through this valley, through this down, that you have a plan and you are working on a better future for them. In your name we pray. All right, without further ado, here is the wonderful Dr. Lona Cook and I tackling grief. So I'm very sorry. I don't know if you saw my Insta story. I just posted it like a half hour ago. You were actually working. I don't work on Friday mornings. So I was like polling, like, do I have to put on a bra for talking to my friend Lona? And then I like even went as far as to put like sit at my recording station and be like, nope, can't see them. Those babies hang low. Don't need to have a bra on. So the consensus was I didn't get pretty for you. I'm very sorry.
No worries. I don't work on Fridays either. I just came up here because someone was going to meet me up here for something. And then I was like, I'm just going to stay up here because I have probably less distractions with dogs barking in the background and such.
Perfect. Okay. So I have like 2 sticky notes on my computer saying like, don't forget to ask her to tell her story, because I do this with my friends when I have them on and I'm just like, we just get into it. And then like 20 minutes in, I'm like, oh, you have to tell people who you are because I didn't. So please do the question I hate answering the most, but is very important. Like, who are you, Dr. Lona Cook?
Okay. So I've been in practice now about 10 years. I practiced in Western Wisconsin, just south of you, Lauryn. And
I know I was kind of hoping that we would be able to find a way to actually record this in person.
Oh yeah.
But
that was not hard, but
no, it wouldn't have, but like busy schedules, the way it is, you're like, all right, I have 11 to noon. Is that going to be a problem? I'm like, we'll make this work. It'll be great.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay. So yeah, been in practice a little over 10 years. We just had our 10-year anniversary in my primary practice. Was lucky and blessed in the sense that the first few years it grew rather quickly and it opened up a lot of doors when I put this book out called Just Tell Me Where to Start. That was really just this like resource that I wanted while I was in school on what did you do to get open, start seeing patients, make some money, pay off student loans. I just wanted a firsthand account, and I happened to have a background in creative writing from my undergrad. So it was like a love project for me to put this thing together. And I literally just went back to my plan.
I always forget that part of your story because I'm like, I look at you as a fellow Enneagram type 3 and only 45 minutes from me and my OG coach and friend. And I'm like, damn it, look at her. She wrote another book. I should write a book. And then I remember that part of your story that you actually like writing and I don't. I don't like writing, but it's so easy to like look at your mentors and be like, should I write a book? No, I should not write a book. No, I should start a podcast.
I should do a podcast, but I can write books and I can write them pretty fast, but I need someone to proof the hell out of them. That's why I switched from being an English major to a creative writing major, because in creative writing, it's just like anything goes.
Yep.
So
sorry, you wrote a book. Yeah.
Put that together. It went out, kind of launched me into a like ability to do some speaking in the profession and mentoring. And then I was crazy and thought I should open a second practice because I had gotten married and moved. So I was an hour away from my primary practice and driving every day. So I was like, well, I have energy and no kids yet, so might as well open a practice. Well, technically I had 3 stepkids, but they only lived with us sometimes. So,
right.
And anyways, after realizing that I had bitten off more than I could chew, I had to find some key clutch teammates at that point, and get an associate. And then eventually I had a partner come into the second practice and all things started to evolve, had a baby, realized that, if you get good people on your team, you can do some of these crazy things like open multiple practices. And so I ended up opening a third brick and mortar practice with another partner, Dr. Ashley, who's about 20 minutes from my other practice. So I've been through the brick and mortar open 3 different times. It's been a good experience. You know how that goes, Lauren. And then we actually now do a lot of work in our school district. So we have another practice, but it's not brick and mortar because it's mobile. And that's been a passion project the last few years, just really working with getting education in our schools about what chiropractic. And at first was just a slow process of bringing staff on board because they were really looking for some changes in the school district as far as like what they offered for health benefits. Mm-hmm. And then as more staff got involved in it, then they started asking questions about how do the students get more involved. And so it's just been this very organic thing over the last 4 years that's developed. So now I'm back in my home, which is Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin.
Your first baby.
In my first baby.
Yep.
Yeah. I practice 3.5 days a week. I've learned to not run 6 different directions at once if possible, because I'm kind of coming into different seasons of practice now, which is probably part of what we'll talk about is just how, as you know, life happens, you do have to learn how to adapt to different seasons in business and practice and where your mind's at and what else is on your plate. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
You're hilarious. So first of all, you're so like me, where you just like, yeah, and then I opened another practice, and then I had a baby, and then I did this, and then that. And it's like, oh, and then I'm also in the school. I almost forgot about that. It's like,
I love having new things happen, as you can tell.
Yep.
And that is the best way to like harness my energy, is to make sure that I have creative outlets. Otherwise I could like self-destruct.
Yeah. And I would also like to call a big BS on you said I was really lucky and blessed to have great success early on in my first practice. And I think that that's something that when we are like really in alignment, this isn't even what our episode's supposed to be about, but whatever, we're just going to go there. Like when you're so in alignment with your gifts and your talents, it does kind of seem like, well, I don't want, and I don't feel like you're not supposed to take credit, right, for like God's gifts, like yada, yada, yada. But like, it does feel like, I don't know, it just kind of happened. And it's like, no, you worked your ass off during that hustle phase.
A lot of hustle phase. Yes. Yeah. And it was linear focus. Like I was building a practice and was totally focused on that, which I had the blessing of that I could be that focused.
Exactly. The ability to go all in on the hustle phase is super, that is a blessing. I 100% agree with that, because I get questions and I kind of haven't found the right person to answer them yet, because, it's people who are new graduates who have kids and they're like, okay, well, I can't work 60 hours a week hustling to build this. How would you advise building a super successful practice on like 20 to 30 hours a week? And I'm just like, I'm just going to put that question to the back because I got no idea. Because you're the same. I continued to work on my maternity leave. How long was your maternity leave?
I don't even want to say it's embarrassing, but 2 weeks for Jack.
Yeah. Mine was 5 weeks with both. And even during then, I think I actually did pretty decent for the first 2 or 3 weeks. But then it was just like, there was never a phase, even when the kids came in, that I was working less than 45, it's just constant.
Right. So, and that's part of what I've learned too, is like, man, it shows all the weaknesses, right? It shows where you really got to build a great team around you. Otherwise, you're back in it as fast as possible. Right. And that's where the phase I'm in now is trying to learn how to be less of the doer of everything.
Right. Was there so there's the hustle phase, and then kids are likely kind of the insert for a lot of people's stories. Was there a burnout that kind of happened in between? Or did you just realize, were you just innately connected enough that you're like, I can't keep doing this. I'm going to make major changes before shit hits the fan?
Yeah. Part of it was like, there was a point in year 3 when I had both practices going, and no partner yet and just one associate, that I was like, my marriage is going to end if I don't figure this out, because I was working so many hours per day because the practices were hours apart as well. So like I would go back and forth between the practices. It was just crazy. And so I knew like this is only sustainable for like 6 months or so. And then I'm going to lose my shit, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I look back also, and I will say this because, you know, you can look at it and be like, I would never do that. And then there's a part of me that's like, because I did some of these things, how I just launched myself so far ahead of many other I know, because I was willing to get dirty working and do the things, you know. Mm-hmm. So it isn't glamorous. It is long hours and whatnot, but it really put certain opportunities, you know, only 10 years in, opened up for me because of having so many things organized early on.
Yep. Yeah. It's that scrappy kind of hustle that, I don't want to say it starts to fade, but like, so in the beginning, when you're just like go mode, I really didn't spend much time thinking about like, am I happy? Am I fulfilled? Like, is this sustainable? Is this balanced? I was just like, I'm in a race. Just keep going. Like, wake up, do the thing, get the opportunity, close the sale. And then like, yeah, it is kind of around, I don't know. I guess for both of us, yours was year 3. Mine was closer to year 5, I think, where I was like,
Jack also was huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Where things kind of, I don't want to say slowed down, but like we weren't getting 300% growth within a year. And like, and it did start to be like, oh, okay, I can come up for air. And it sounds nice, and it is partially nice, but there's also this sense where when you have the time to think, then you start kind of like, I don't know, I never questioned being a chiropractor, but there were definitely days where I was bored.
Yeah, you know? I think that's for me where I need to have like some creative project. I love adjusting. I do love that. I think, but I have to stay like where I'm engaged with something else I'm creating too, so that I can be really grounded and present, because that kind of up there creative energy has a channel. And therefore when I'm with my people in like uptime, go time in the office, I'm much more like centered, if that makes sense. And I think that's just part of when you start to learn yourself, you know, in the beginning, practice every phase of it, whether it's talking about like paying your bills, marketing, training staff, etc. It's all new. It's all creative process for you because you're like drinking from a water hose. And then
I think an angel just got its wings.
Yeah. And then, sorry about that. And then, you know, eventually some of that is like so repetitious and
true.
You know,
yeah.
For some of us, that'll drive us nuts if we're like, I'm having the same day every day. At least for me, I have to feel like there's things that need my attention in other ways.
Have you read Rocket Fuel?
Mm-mm.
Okay. No. Don't. I mean, no, that was a terrible, like, I have not read the whole book, but I'm kind of at a point in my life where I'm sick of reading. I have 2 different categories of books that I'm sick of reading. One is white millionaire men just telling everyone that you just got to like drive harder, yada, yada. And then I'm also sick of reading self-help books by white women who are just like, I believe in you. You are amazing. And I'm just like, okay, there's got to be something in between. But anyways, I don't even know who wrote Rocket Fuel, but I'm pretty sure it was the first category.
Yeah.
But Kirby and I were driving to Minneapolis, and we started, like, it was the only book he had downloaded on Audible. And I'm like, all right, let's listen to this. And the book's premise is talking about visionaries and integrators and how every business needs both. And that like visionaries are very, very bored with the day-to-day stuff. And they like will come up with these like great ideas and lead their team on this like path that may or may not actually turn out that great, but like we're excited about it. And so like we have the passion, but then we need like integrators in our life who are like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take over payroll because it hasn't happened in a month, and you know, like all of those things. So we're just visionaries, Lona.
Yeah. I 100% subscribe to that. I know I'm the person that can see way more what's happening up at the top than I can like, let me proofread my own sentences. No, not really interested.
Nope. I already wrote the thing. Don't make me reread it.
Yes. But that's why I know I got to have some good people around me that help me make it things, buffer it. They buffer it.
Teamwork. Okay. So when I reached out to you about coming on and I said, like, what are some of the topics that are really your innate is wanting to come out of you? What's your message right now? You actually brought up something that I did not foresee coming, and you brought up the concept of grief.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, normally if I didn't know you, I'd be like, okay, interesting person I'm going to have on the podcast. Tell me more before I filter it. But I was like, no, I've seen you speak so many times, and we've had so many conversations where I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to see so what's up? I did not see that topic coming. Where did this come from?
Well, okay. It kind of gets into, I was thinking more about like seasons in your life and seasons in your practice. And, what we just talked about, there's a season where for many of us, whether it's right in the beginning or later on, maybe when our kids grow up a little bit or what have you, where you are in more of a linear focus with your business. If it's your purpose and your passion, where you're like, gosh, I can pour a lot of energy into this right now. And life happens, right? And there's different things that are going to happen in all of our lives that are unforeseen at times and leave us in interesting positions. And I'll say this kind of as like a undertone to begin with is, I'm a philosophical chiropractor, meaning I really geek out on vitalism and the ideas of, we live in a quantum world and life is happening through us and our nervous system is part of that channel. And so I really, truly believe that things happen for us, not to us. And so I'll kind of preface what happened to me and then what's kind of been the offshoot of that is, going along, building all these businesses, definitely very oriented towards success entrepreneurially. And that was great. And then things happened, some huge blessings in my personal life, like getting married, having a child, things like that. And then also my mom got sick and she first had ovarian cancer, which is a very understandable thing in the sense that we all know people that have had cancer, and we know that ovarian cancer is kind of a rough diagnosis. And she did some of the traditional medical and she did some holistic stuff, and she really came through that with flying colors, I thought, once she started to decide what she was actually going to do. And it was hard for me as the chiropractor to sit back and realize that she has to make a choice for herself and I can't control this. And again, I believe the person has to believe in what they choose. Anyways, fast forward a couple of years and my mom ends up kind of being in a scenario where she's helping her mother at end of life stage. So my grandmother, who was in her 90s, and it's fascinating. We still don't really understand what happened, but she went from watching my son during the day when I had my office hours, so 3 days a week, to she wasn't eating. She didn't leave her room. She lost so much weight that we had to end up chaptering her to get her help because she had no history of mental illness. And we literally thought she was going to die by passive suicide. And that happened in the fall of 2016. And so I just want to paint the picture for a second. I went from my mom was a teacher for 30 some years, highly involved, highly, educated woman, to she's in a mental institution, not showering. And they're telling her, Nola, you can go home on 4 days if you just take a shower, and she wouldn't do it. And so I have a 1-year-old and I'm running all these practices and I'm watching my dad drive an hour each way to go visit my mom in a mental institution. We're like, is cancer back? What the hell is happening? And this went on for months. And so I'm still having to show up to the practice, run the thing, and feel like I can put my shit together in the morning. Meanwhile, my dad's showing up at 6 a.m. at my house, bawling because he doesn't know what to do. It was just chaos in my mind at the time. And so that was the beginning of it. And then the part that really gets into grief is that here we are 4 years later almost, and my mom is still in that scenario. You know, she's home now because finally, at least we just said, like, you're not helping her. Keeping her chaptered, keeping her in a mental institution is not the solution, because she's got her wits about her. She just has no energy and no desire to really exude any energy or take care of herself. So she's been in and out of nursing homes, but it's been like someone died, but they didn't die. Right. And that's a really weird thing too, to go through, where you're like, I'm not sure if I should be grieving. Should I have hope? Where am I supposed to be? Also, can I get her help? And how do you get someone help that doesn't want help? And oh my Lord, I have learned lesson upon lesson upon lesson about like trying to stay healthy yourself in the midst of trying to help someone else. And then also like how that may look different every single day. Like a day that I'm more grounded, I may be able to go over there and try and do more for my dad and my parents. And on a day where I'm sad myself, or, you know, I just don't have reserves, it's not the day for me to jump in, you know? So that was why I brought the topic up is.
Yeah. And I figured, I mean, every time I've heard you tell this story intimately over coffee, I've heard like it in a 2-minute version on stage, and every time it just gives me chills. And because like I can relate so much to that aspect, that pillar of strength that your mom is in your life, and how important it was in the moment when things kind of like fell apart. And it's just like, what I wonder is, I imagine that you didn't break down at all. Like, I'm sure things were exploding in your brain. Your life felt chaotic. But you didn't have like a week where you couldn't get out of bed and you had to cancel patients or anything like that.
No, I still was showing up. But I think this is where we all have to give ourselves permission at different seasons that things have to be breathed. They have to breathe, right? Mm-hmm. And so part of when you have this contrast that shows up in your life and things are working well up until that point, the contrast, although when you're staring at it, it can feel so overwhelming and like you do just want to curl up in a ball. There's also trying to look for a blessing that's coming out of it in some form. When you get that ability to start to look for it, is generally there. And that may take a while to start to look for it. But some of what was offered in hindsight, when I look through this, is realizing how much more I needed people who actually support me around me, instead of me being like the giver for everything else. And that I think is rampant sometimes in entrepreneurs is.
Oh, especially in female healthcare providers.
Right. Yes. And that just won't work. You know, like when you're low on reserves, you know, it's going to be difficult to like put up with bullshit. Right. And so
I joke, it doesn't happen often, but like a shift where I'm adjusting and I am just not like, it's just not a great day type of thing. I just turn the volume up a little bit more. And like the front desk just knows, like, it's not like blasting, but it's just loud enough that it's like, I am doing everything in my power to just give you a fantastic adjustment today. I can't have small talk about your cat. I don't give enough fucks to do that. I can only designate my fucks to your nervous system today. So the volume's going up.
Yes. Right. Yeah. And giving ourselves permission to have those moments or periods. Because clarity comes out of that too, and change will come out of that. And so the grief part of it is, again, everyone's going to process grief differently. What it also has taught me is so much more on a deeper level, like the suffering that humans have, whether expressed outwardly or not, you know, that we are carrying in our nervous systems, and the fact that we really, our own mothers, we don't understand probably one iota of some of what they've gone through. So the compassion component for me just like amped up a million times more for.
I was going to ask if how it changed you.
Yeah. I mean, definitely I've gone through like every emotion towards my mom in the midst of this, because so much of it is still very hard for me to understand, the rapid change that occurred to her. And I have my own kind of like medical thoughts around it at this point. Again, I don't probably need to get into that, but the parts that really were blessings to me is, number one, it helped me realize like all these adhesions I kind of still had siphoning off on me, and my expectation of like how I need to behave in relationship to my mother and vice versa. Because I think many of us don't fully birth ourselves into our adult life because of these like attachments we still have to our parents and expectations that they may have placed on us, or maybe we just took them on ourselves, even though they're not real.
Those unsaid expectations. Yep.
Yeah. And it affects us in business. It affects us in our relationships. And so to really, I don't want to say sever those ties, but see them and realize you have choices that you didn't even realize.
Well, they're not serving you anymore. Like they served you when you were 12. Yes. They, you know, like when you were a child, when you were 5 years old, they served you to look at your mom as a flawless heroine that does, you know, that doesn't have flaws. And then like you get to this like adult stage where you're like, you have flaws, but that's okay because I have flaws. And then it allows like, oh, I'm not flawless, and that's okay also because I'm also a mother. And you know, and so yeah, definitely.
A lot of what you see in your parents is probably the same flaws.
The same damn flaws.
Yes. And so that becomes very eye-opening too. Yeah. So I just think there's so much, there are massive gifts in grief. But it's obviously a very undesirable point in life generally for most of us. And I wouldn't wish it on anyone, and yet the gifts are there. And they're there for your practice to be able to hold that much more space for people. I do feel like the depth of my practice and like, we have a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of suffering in this world. There's a lot of people that have lost children and things like that. And so it was like, gosh, you know, you can feel with people differently, not even so much that you're going to have those moments when they're on the table, just the ability to like recognize these people are deeply hurt right now. And I'm not going to be the one that fixes any of that for them because that's their job.
Yep. I mean, we're talking about nobody wants to go through grief, you know, like we'd all choose, but grief just so often, grief and like just these derailments in life that none of us predict, or would choose, you know, we would never choose like, when I'm planning out 2020, I will select a very terrifying thing to happen that will derail me. But when you look at whether it's biblical philosophy, you know, Deepak, whatever you're looking at, I've heard so many healers say this, that like, in order to evolve, there has to be a death of self. There has to be a death of the old version, the old model that you were running, the old programming. It's like the Phoenix thing, you know, like it's what it's all about. And it's like, nobody wants to go through the burn up, but it is absolutely essential because like, if I didn't have, you know, the derailment that happened to me in early of last year, I would, you know, it's very easy to hindsight go like, okay, I would have just kind of kept on that hedonic treadmill more, like, and I don't know what that would have done I mean, I know for me, from like a loving human, I would not have been my best self. That was definitely, I was on a pace of like just ego and entrepreneur and success and like not really thinking much about that. And then it definitely wouldn't have been what was great for my marriage or my family. And so it's like, looking back on those derailments, they're blessings, but they suck a lot.
Yes.
So you said that, so it's been 4 years, and you're able to kind of start looking at the silver lining. Do you feel like you've processed this grief fully yet? Or are you...
I do. I mean, I think it's had its own evolution. I think it could have more that I still don't even know of, but I've been extremely, I've had the good fortune to, because the practices were doing well when this happened, you know, and I had good people built around. It wasn't like everything was sitting on my shoulders at that time. And so I've been able to have like sessions and therapies and different things to help me kind of look at some of some of what maybe had been under the surface for my mom for a long time that I was so not aware of because I'd never recognized it before. And that's part of like where, you know, as we grow and have more human experiences, like stuff that is buried starts to come up and we can learn a lot about ourselves from it. And that's been a lot of what.
Yeah, you can choose to learn from it, but you have to choose. Yeah, like you have to not like just shove it back down and be like, well, life sucks. And like we all know those people, we have those patients that it's like, well, life just happens to me and what am I going to do about it?
Right. And so, you know, I have a couple of very good mentors that, you know, helped me a lot during these last 4 years and seeking out other ways to learn about like what I was going through and look at how do I like mother myself right now, because I still felt like I need a mother at a 1-year-old, you know, I wanted to ask questions that I just couldn't. And so giving myself some grace there and giving myself grace that like, you know, there's going to be days that were just overwhelming still, you know, going to court appointments for my mother's chaptering, you know, that was not good days. But I could also look at it like there could be worse days. Right. And being just trying to keep a grounding point so that I remembered who I was. I remember I had several conversations with my dad, and I love my father. He's very, very much been like a solid rock for me, but having to say to him like, Dad, you can't come over to my house in the morning anymore. I can't start my days with you. And it's not because I don't love you. I'm drowning, you're drowning. It's not going to work if we both keep setting up this negative energy in our lives in the beginning. We need to like either decide that we have hope or at least decide to take care of ourselves and do that. And that's part of what it has taught me too, is that, you know, if we believe the outer world is a reflection of our inner world, that's part of what I had to keep looking at is like, why have I attracted this experience to go through? What is it here to teach me? You know, how can I respond differently? So maybe the outer circumstance starts to change, or at least the way I'm processing it starts to change. And that, you know, clearly didn't happen overnight. But if I didn't have my philosophy of vitalism bringing into this experience, I'm sure it would have been a completely more overwhelming experience instead of more of like, let me just in the moment here where I'm sitting in the mental institution with my mother that I never in a million years thought that this would be the case. Let me just take this in and then also just try and like take a step back sometimes and just say like, okay, what is going on here? And so
sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second because I'll totally forget it. It's an interesting thing that chiropractors, I'm going to say chiropractors pretty uniquely go through. So like the only thing I can kind of make an analogy to it is somebody like a very strong Christian or anybody who's very strong in their religion, and something sad and terrible happens. And they often have one of two paths where they are forced, like they just innately don't question and they just double down on their faith, or they get angry and question and like it's a big struggle. And within chiropractic and other health, I'm sure like Reiki and all of those other professions kind of deal with this too. But I get angry when my daughter gets an ear infection. I get angry because I'm like, we do everything right. And like, I'm sure, you know, like you were probably processing that too of like, not only am I angry that I'm losing my mom, I'm also angry because like, come on, chiropractic. And so like you were able to fall on that philosophy.
Yes. But I'll take this a little deeper. And this is the part of chiropractic that I wish we went like way more into, is that I think we do a bang up job of looking at like physical, like nervous system physical. But I don't think we do a great job in our profession of connecting the dots of like, nobody said it was just about physical. Like the triune is actually 2/3 non-physical, and parts of our non-physical are mental, emotional, spiritual. And so to me, like to summarize, I look at the physical as the like embodiment of the other parts. And so what I could see and I trust is that when it's showing up in your physical, like it's been brewing in these higher energy aspects of us. So the non-physical aspects of us for a long time, or at least in an intense way. not, but I mean,
and that's the part as a healthcare provider, we don't have any, we're only helping them. We're only able to really help them with the physical, unless I'm going to sit down and like lead a guided meditation as a part of every adjustment. Like that is something that, yeah, you're right. We don't really address that. We should be like every chiropractic conference should be like, and we're going to start with an adjustment and then a meditation. And then,
but I also do believe that like clearing out a nervous system is going to open up these other aspects of us. Right. So what I felt like with my mom is like, okay, she had cancer, right? That clearly was an embodiment of some dis-ease, right? But there's all the other parts of that would have been components of that dis-ease, like emotions and mental health and different things. And so I kept trying to understand too, of like, there was probably lots of things she had suppressed to get to the point where you have ovarian cancer, right? Mm-hmm. And that's maybe what we're dealing with now. So if I could look at it from this intelligent process, like maybe this is part of her healing. How do I know, right? It feels really freaking uncomfortable, but nobody said healing was actually going to be like walk in the park, right? And the funny thing is like, and this is what I tell, and sometimes I don't have the energy to explain to like, you know, people who want to know how she's doing, but she's a lot better than she was 4 years ago now. But if you knew her before, it's like a totally different person. So I can go to her house and have a conversation that mirrors a pretty normal conversation. Or sometimes I'll call her on the phone and she actually answers now and she wouldn't have before. And it's like, if I didn't know, I would think she was my mom from before. But the physical way she shows up is still so different. You know, she doesn't do any of the things she used to do. So it's interesting because I still believe that there's probably, whether it's in this lifetime or what comes after, I don't know, like this process undertaking her, that she's healing some of this kind of suppressed energy. And I don't pretend to understand it.
It might not even be energy from her life that she's processing. Like,
so true. I mean, how do we know? This is where I kind of geek out on like the fact that vitalism holds enough space to say, you know what, there's a whole lot more in this intelligence that we don't even pretend to have the brain power to wrap our minds around, you know, and that we recognize that God or universal intelligence, you know, is infinitely, you know, expansive. Mm-hmm. And so by using that faith or that, philosophy, it helped me try and like take more of a bird's eye view of like, yeah, I mean, we knew that she was suffering when she had the cancer diagnosis. And just because she started to make a lot of changes doesn't mean that there still wasn't other things that needed to be unraveled almost for her. So, you know, it's challenging because it's been such a long thing, to not know, like, you know, in 2016, I'm in grief. In 2017, I'm in grief. Now, 2018, I have hope again. You know,
like calendar years. Like, I just want to be like so quickly, like, I don't know, towards the end of 2019, there was a lot of, and it wasn't even really stuff that was mine. It was just happening around me and employees and friends and my family, where I'm just like, what is all this like ick? What is this? And I was just like, all right, January 1st, bye. And it like lingered. And I feel like everyone around me is kind of coming out of it now towards the end of January as we're recording this. But I'm like, come on, hello, January 1st, fresh start. Like,
but also like we're energy and the universe is energy. I'm reading this book because a girlfriend told me to read it. That's Do Less. It's about how.
Oh yeah, Kate Northrup. Yeah, she's my girl.
Right. But she's talking about like, again, like we are part of this universe and our bodies are tapped in on a level we don't even pretend to understand medically, I don't think. And so when people are shit was flying everywhere back in 2019 at the end of the year, mine included, is like, I think it's just baptizing us into what's, you know, the evolution that's going to come in this next decade. And that makes me sound really hippy dippy, but that's where I'm at this point, that I just think
I love like, hippy.
Yeah, we're like just scratching the surface of understanding. I mean, how many times do people walk into the office and they're like, oh, the weather's changing because I feel this in my body, you know, and it's like, okay, clearly there's something there, because it's like every third person, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I learned from Frozen too that like water goes through like 7 animals before it comes to us or something like that. Water holds 7 previous, whatever. Olaf was really smart for a moment. So we're even seeing Disney get on board with the hippy dippy. Okay.
Totally.
You've seen Frozen too, right?
I haven't seen Frozen 2 yet.
What are you doing? Lona.
My son only wants to watch, he's only 4. I'm a bad parent, but like Jurassic Park.
He can watch Jurassic Park? That's amazing.
Yeah, he's 100% male energy.
Boy, I need dinosaurs and sharks. Show him like Sharknado. All right, so this topic is super interesting, and I know you're all getting a lot out of it, and I promise we're going to return in just a minute. But first, I have to tell you about some of my favorite deals, including one new one I got for you all on our She Slays savings page. So first is my favorite artist and chiropractor, Sandy Arthur. She is the owner behind Sandy Spines. So check out her really beautiful art on either her Instagram at Sandy Spines or her Etsy page. You're going to get 10% off her entire order at checkout just by mentioning She Slays. And also, if she's got any stickers in stock, she's going to throw a couple of those in for you just because you're my friend. So if you've listened to episode 6, you know that one of the biggest mistakes I made was waiting to add a practice coach to my life. It's one of those investments that once I did it, I seriously never looked back. It's really great to have someone to bounce your ideas off of, and especially someone who's already made the mistakes and knows how to fix it and do it right. Someone who sees the things you're not even aware you might be doing wrong yet, or how you could improve. So you've probably noticed I've had a few coaches on the show because, like I said, I really like chiropractic coaching. And if you've listened to episode 29, you've already met one of the amazing women I recommend frequently, Dr. Nona Javid. She's the founder of the part-time $1 million cash practice, right? And you thought She Slays Savings was hard to say. So Dr. Nona is this brilliant and powerful woman who helps you build a practice to support the life you want, not a life that gets the leftovers of your business. So if you feel like you're a slave to insurance companies, not getting paid what you're worth, or spending too many hours in your clinic instead of living your life, she's your girl. So all listeners of the show will not only get a free 1-hour consult with her, but also $300 off. Yes, you heard that, $300 off your first month of coaching with her. So check out our She Slays Savings tab on our website to get more info about Dr. Nona and her part-time $1 million cash practice. That's sheslayspodcast.com/SheSlaysSavings and click on Dr. Nona's beautiful face. So one more for today is my favorite techie thing we added to our practice in 2019, and that's the personalized clinic app from Connected and Inspired Media. It's a super well-made app for all prenatal and pediatric clinics that's a great resource for all of your patients. It's full of educational material, exercises, rehab, brain exercises, stretches. You're going to love it. So for more information, check out our She Slays Savings page on our website. And of course, mention She Slays when signing up and save 20% off your first month. Okay, that's it for now. Let's get back to the show. Okay, so not in the beginning, but kind of like when you were in the thick of it, you've mentioned a couple things that helped get you through, lots of grace for sure, which, oh my gosh, we don't give ourselves even a fraction amount of grace. I have this conversation with Charlie, who's 7.5, where like, there's just some days where she's sad or she had a bad day and it's at the end of the day and she's just like, today wasn't good. I didn't get a lot of schoolwork done. And I just say like, it's okay to feel the feelings that you're feeling. And what we want to do as a society, so like, let's say it's a bad day and you have to go and you're just not in it. And it's like, that's okay. Well, but what we do is we go like, what's wrong with you? Like you have everything, like it could be worse. Like you should just do this. And we try and like take this, I don't want to say like masculine energy, but this very like aggressive energy and try and like force you into it instead of just having grace and being like, I'm not my best version today. I'm going to show up the best version possible for me today. I'm not going to cry to my patients. Like I'm going to be profesh about this, but like, that's okay. And if I find myself like laughing this afternoon, despite the fact that horrible things are happening to my mom, because we also do that, right? Like, if something really sad, somebody's diagnosed with cancer and you're feeling it, but then like there's this moment where you forgot it, big air quotes, for a second, and you're like, oh my gosh, how could you be laughing right now when something so terrible is happening? It's just like I'm just riding the waves, and I'm allowing myself to be a human of energy and be. So anyway, so you mentioned having grace, but what else did you do?
Yeah, I think
through that period.
Major grounding points, like for me, it's like I have to move my body, and that puts me in like a better state. So like I didn't let exercise lapse. I, if anything, did more of what I needed to do for myself. So for me, like my morning routine is pretty sacred, and obviously it's had to look differently during like, oh, you have a baby during this period of your life, but it still would, I would find a way to get it in. And so that remained true. I think, I mean, I can't say enough about, especially as a leader, like, yeah, you are expected to show up a certain way generally to work so that your staff can, what to expect. However, the reality is too, like, hopefully, especially if we're teaching them about vitalism and being, congruent, it's like, I can't show up and be like, this is the best day of my life. That would be really inauthentic of me. So that's, again, the grace too of like being real with your staff of like, I'm going to show up. I might seem a little lower energy than what you expect of me. And please just realize that this is one of the most terrible things I've gone through in my life. And I'm going to still show up for you, but I might need a little wiggle room here. Mm-hmm. That will show you real quick who's mature around you, who's also like able to see bigger than themselves. And that was a big thing for me. I was like, okay, I need people around me that have some heart for me as well. Things like that. So, the biggest thing I would say is it's going to be different for every person, but I think like that is not the time to slip on the self-care. If nothing else, that's the time to double down on it. Because yes, it's been an interesting ride for me, but I can only imagine if I would have let other things slip in that time period, how much more challenging it could have been. And so I think like that's a part of getting perspective too, that if you, can do the things that you need to do to take care of yourself, then it doesn't have to be this thing that ruins different areas of your life.
Right. So, bad days, bad weeks, you talk about these seasons. Mm-hmm. If you had to like pull a number out of thin air and say like, how long, if somebody's listening and they're in a season where they're just like, I am getting beat up, I'm slacking on self-care, how long is too long, or when's the appropriate time to like really start seeking help? It's kind of like one of those things where it's like a bad day, a bad week is fine, but like if it lasts for X amount of time, like, like you don't have to want to have sex with your husband every day, but like if you don't want to have your sex with your husband for like an entire month, there might be something more going on and you need help. So did you get the question in there, or did I distract you by talking about sex?
No. Well, I don't think that's different for everyone, but because of like how you and I run, like where we're like fast-paced individuals, I don't let it get to the point where I ask for help pretty much right away. Meaning I'm going to I know my people that I go to for self-care, and I'm going to get that on the books like pronto. And if anything, learning from my mom too, of what's going on, I think like you got to have your people around that are built around you. And it doesn't have to be like these massive things. It might just be the person that's going to call bullshit on your bullshit sometimes, or, is going to let you talk without interrupting you, or, whatever it is. But I think you got to do those things almost right away. It's like, not because you're expected to get out of that season, but because you want to put some guardrails around yourself. I think those are the two different things. Is like, are you wallowing, or are you just accepting yourself? This is where I'm at right now, but I'm still
very valid, very big difference. Yeah. So wallowing for even 2 days is too much, but you might be in a season where it might be months, but you're accepting and, connecting with yourself and taking care. Great answer. Yeah, that's a good one. So, okay. We kind of had to close up because, we're I know you have a timeline here, but it sounds like philosophy. I'm not going to say it sounds like. I know that your philosophy really helped carry you through. And yet you came from the same school as me. We won't talk about, we won't throw shade at them, but there's not a huge philosophy culture there. So if there's a chiropractor who is struggling, personal life is kind of beating them up, or they're burning out, they're kind of bored within chiropractic, and they don't have that philosophy to turn to, how do they start getting into the philosophy world?
Start to cultivate it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I like that you put that spin on if they're struggling and a little beat up. Well, we get humbling experiences to grow from, right? And so if you can recognize, like, maybe I'm not doing things the way that I see in my most empowered life, then that's probably the door opening for you to realize that you're ready to like accept some other advice or input. If you think you know everything and your way is for sure the best, then this conversation won't work for you probably. So, for me, it would be, look to someone that you do want to emulate to some extent, not because you want to become them, but because success leaves clues. And when you're not confident, you can borrow someone else's for a while and try it on. And then it kind of like their words sort of become yours, and eventually it becomes authentic. So, there's a difference between being like, well, that's not me, and also like, I'm just not trying to grow. We all have to like wear our mentors' confidence for a while, or learn different word choices, or ask new questions. And so for me, it started with like a mentor telling me, hey, you need to deepen your philosophy. That's going to really help your practice grow. And I started to realize like, the people with the biggest practices generally have deep philosophy and conviction and certainty and, all these words we hear when you go to seminars. But so I went to the rah-rah seminars for a while, and I still love them. I don't necessarily feel like that's the key thing I needed anymore. But in the beginning it was. I just needed to sit and marinate in these people who loved chiropractic, who could speak it eloquently, who also sometimes said things that triggered dogma in me, where I was like, I don't know if I subscribe to that. And then I'd have to go do my own digging. And that's where it becomes yours. Is like, okay, I vibe with that person. I want to like listen to their YouTubes or their podcasts or whatever. Oh, there comes a trigger for me. I don't totally 100% buy that. Now I'm going to like read some of my own work or do some different things. And it's a living thing. Your philosophy can change. It doesn't have to stay like, I don't believe that my philosophy today is the same as it was 2 years ago, is the same as it was.
I sure should hope my philosophy is not the same philosophy as when I was 21, right? Like,
right. I'm with you 100%.
So who are some of your mentors? Like, what are you reading? What are you jamming on right now?
Yeah. Well, in chiropractic, I just went to the Remarkable Practice CEO. They had an immersion down in Dallas, and I thought that was great. It was just really well organized. And so like, I really like that for the idea of like a system, but for a larger view of like more than one or two people in a practice. Because I haven't found a lot of coaching in that way before, where it was like, hey, you've got multiple practices, or hey, you've got multiple DCs in office. Like, let's talk about, big entities. So for me, that was great. But as far as like what really geeks me out, it's more of like, again, this train of like quantum theory. So I love Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton and DeMartini. There's a woman, her name is Pernilla. Oh God, I can't think of her last name. I'll get it to you, Lauren. She's like a feminine energy coach. So I've been working with her this last 3 months. And she's like who I'm really geeking out on, because she's really taught me to just like go into some of the things that either I like stuff away in the corner, or just I'm like, oh, that's not pretty. I shouldn't have that feeling. Maybe it's not valid. And, I was really trying to help me get more grounded in that my desires and things I need are equally valid. And I think because I was labeled as like a bossy kid growing up, never thought like, oh, it couldn't be possible for me to not get my needs met because I'm bossy, I'll make sure. But there's certain needs that we all have that, maybe they were never ones that were like celebrated in you. And so therefore you put them in the corner, So I just really am interested in a lot of the like powerful feminine teachers that are out there, and you kind of have to dig for some of those books and different things. So, we mentioned the book Do Less. I'm excited to like finish that. And then that prompted like reading the story of Mary Magdalene.
Seriously?
So I bought that, and I just kind of geek out on trying to understand why I am the way that I am, as well as like, what I'm experiencing and witnessing in my lineage of, my mother and my grandmother and things like that. So that's kind of where I'm at this time, is getting on that like feminine train.
You are such a beautiful human. You just like bleed this, this like, it's this yin yang energy where it's not feminine. And like, you've like taken that masculine driver thing, and it just feels like you just like put some reins on it and figured your shit out. Figured your shit out. You're an inspiration, because like,
I don't know if I figured it out, but I realize I don't know shit anymore compared to like what is masculine.
I think that means you're getting closer.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that means you're getting closer.
Talk about. Yeah, I got nothing. But yeah, I mean, I think masculine ways of doing things get things done fast a lot of times. And then there's also, especially for women, where it's like, this is not, I can't wear this forever. So.
All right. Well, tell people where to find you. Are you speaking at all in 2020? Where are you?
I'm at the Women Chiropractors Conference down.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I want to get to see you.
Yes, I'll be there.
No, we look 45 minutes
pregnant at that time, but I'll be on the beach. And then, I just said, and I'm teaching at a yoga conference actually here in
the summit.
The summit, yep. And then I said yes to doing I can't think of the name of the seminar right now, but it's out Life West this fall. Her story.
I am too.
Oh, I'll see you there.
Yay! Well, we're just gonna have to like meet in Minneapolis and coordinate our flights for the WDC annual convention and Her Story. So, oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Lona. You're amazing, and let's grab coffee.
Okay. I'd love to.
All right, She Slayers, thank you so much. I hope you got something amazing out of this. I know you did. Find Lona. You can find her on social media. She's on the internet like all people are nowadays, and she's amazing. So reach out. I know she would love to help you out. All right, until next week. Bye.